Starting.
Hi, my name is Gary Leneve, and this is my persuasive speech for COMM101 online at IVYTECH this summer semester. I'm here to talk to you about violent video games. Anybody ever watched a violent movie? Ever watched Halloween or anything that involves violence? When you got done watching it, did you want to go grab a butcher knife and stab somebody? Probably not. You see, video games have ratings just like movies do. The whole reason it was imposed is the same way that the reason that movies have ratings. Only there's a lot of media hype about bad things that happen and bad kids that do things, and then people like to blame it on video games. And years ago, people like to blame it on rock and roll, and whatever it is, there's always a scapegoat. The thing is that video games are a new phenomenon. 30 years ago, they weren't a huge deal, so people didn't blame things on them. Charles Manson never played video games. There's plenty of people that didn't play video games that have done horrible things. I think it really all depends on your state of mind. And what it really boils down to is people being parents. If you're going to let your kids sit around and be subjected to violent things, then maybe you should watch what they're doing, for one. And for two, if a person's weak-minded enough to hurt someone or kill someone, they probably were before they played a video game where they shot someone. You know, video games have a lot of positives. Hand-eye coordination. They supposedly install creativity in people. The Nature of Neuroscience journal has done a study and found out that people who play violent video games have a 58 up to 58% better vision when it comes to contrast, dark contrast things such as driving at night or picking up outlines of things, the same way that colorblind people see things. Another common myth is that violent video games are majorly played by only boys. Only guys play these games, only guys commit these crimes. But in a survey done by a couple that's actually a married couple, they're both MIT graduates, they wrote a book called Grand Theft Childhood, interviewed 1,200 middle schoolers that play violent video games, and 29% of them were girls. Another thing is you hear these things in the media about, oh, you know, this kid shot somebody and they found out that he plays this game or that game or the other, so then they call it a link. When the fact of the matter is that video games are now bigger than the movie industry. Almost every household has some sort of video game console or PC game in it. So saying that, oh, this person that committed this horrible crime had an Xbox and they had Grand Theft Auto, well, so does half of the rest of the country that doesn't commit crime. So saying that it correlates is a biased opinion. But on the other hand, you know, I mean, obviously subjecting someone, or subjecting yourself rather, to violent images on a constant basis could make you be a more aggressive person. The reasons behind people saying and doing these things they seem legit, but the fact of the matter is that there's not really any evidence to substantiate what they're trying to say. I mean, saying that playing video games is a gateway to killing people or doing drugs just seems ridiculous. I mean, that little white box isn't really going to change anybody's life. There's actually been a decrease in violent video games since 1993. 1993 marked the release of Doom, which was a PC game which was blamed for a majority of the backing of the Columbine students. Well, since 1993, violence in teenagers and young adults has decreased 60%. The violence in video games has gone up. So video game violence, fake violence, is on the rise, but actual violence where people get hurt by people of this demographic has significantly decreased, and it's actually gone down really, really sharply in the past 10 or so years. So that's way after. There was a study at Texas A&M. There's a professor that actually had brought up all that data about violence going down, and a lot of times you hear about you see these graphs that say, oh, this is scientific evidence, because they have a CT scan of someone's brain saying this is when they were playing video games and this is when they weren't. and you see that they have increased blood flow when they play video games, these violent video games. Well, the fact of the matter is that saying that someone has increased blood flow in their brain is a really base level, generalized factor. You have increased blood flow in your brain when you run or do anything else, or visual and auditory elements also increase blood flow in your brain because you're thinking and you're doing. So saying that it correlates violence is really just kind of a, it doesn't make sense. There's a Professor Kierkegaard at the University of Essex in London who has also done studies, and he just basically flat out says that there's no real solid link between kids who play violent video games and kids who don't play violent video games. So I think what it all boils down to is if you're going to blame someone for playing violent video games, he's fine. You should really blame their parents. If you really have a concern about what your kids are doing or what they're seeing or what they're watching, watch it. And if they're going to play video games that are violent, sit down with them and make sure that they know the difference between reality and something that's not real at all. Because chances are that they're not going to turn into some serious monster. I mean, it might be a little more aggressive, but I mean, lots of things make people aggressive. Playing football or being competitive in general at all promotes aggression. So football's been around for centuries and nobody's trying to outlaw that. Thanks.
Okay.